Hello and welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. It's Friday! I'm wearing a camo shirt with little French bulldogs on it, and that means it's happy hour. So let's bring in our resident Gen Z political expert, Link Lauren. Cheers to you, Link.
Thanks for having me.
Yours is apple cider with a cinnamon stick and an apple slice, and mine is also that. But you wouldn't
Yummy.
serve mine at a 6-year-old's birthday party. Unless you want a little visit from Child and Family Services.
Knock, knock at CPS.
So tell me about these final days of the election. Because
Final
we're
days of
less
the
than
election.
we're less than 2 weeks away.
It's chaotic. I think Kamala Harris is still trying to figure out who she is and how she can sell herself to the public. It's funny to me, we're still in the last, 10 days of the election and Kamala's posting memes and funny videos on TikTok. I'm like, where are the policies? What are you going to do for us? We're still waiting.
So if she wins, what will it say about her campaign?
Oh, I don't know what it says about her campaign. What does it say about the country? Just that we're so divided, right? The far left, the liberal mainstream media, they painted Donald Trump as a threat to democracy, a dictator. Meanwhile, their candidate was installed without a single vote from an everyday American. So I think that will be the story of this election cycle.
Well, and it will also show that the Trump as Hitler narrative worked.
That it worked.
And it kind of bums a lot of people out who and there are a lot of voters who don't like Trump, but they still want ideas. They still want solutions. They are still feeling the pinch of the bad economic climate that is really strange. And like there are parts of our economy where it's like, there's lots of jobs and people are spending money. But then other parts where it's like, yes, but 60% of households don't have $1,000 saved.
Totally. It's like 57% of Americans can't put their hands on $1,000 if they're in a crisis. And then Kamala Harris, to me, just screams politics as usual, right? She's been around for years. She's been VP for years. Just like Joe Biden, he's been around for decades. So the same swampy creatures who've been around for decades in D.C., they're going to be there working around Kamala Harris, if she's the president. They're going to have the same bureaucrats around Kamala Harris. So you're just going to get kind of a continuation of the swamp.
And it's interesting because I've seen some of the recent polling that Donald Trump is doing far better now with younger voters than he was 4 years ago. Why is that?
Well, Trump is actually speaking to younger voters, right? He seems authentic. They've said he's a threat to democracy. Meanwhile, the guys in the McDonald's drive-thru, like, you want chicken nuggets, you want to supersize the fry, you want a little extra salt, you want a Diet Coke. I mean, they see Donald Trump in these spaces that they can relate to, and with Kamala Harris, they just don't. And you ask Kamala Harris, who are you? She says, I grew up a middle-class kid in a neighborhood where we took pride in our lawns. And Kamala Harris also...
I mean, that's almost comical at this point.
It is comical.
That is such a parodyable line.
And then she also just doesn't instill confidence. I mean, she's still to this day complaining about the Brett Baer interview that was on this network. I'm like, honey, you sat down in an air-conditioned building and you had to answer questions for 20 minutes. She's acting like she went through some harrowing experience.
But she showed up late.
She showed up late.
She can't answer a follow-up question. That's not Brett Baer's fault.
Right.
But I do think it's interesting that younger people, particularly younger men, are becoming more conservative. Is it because they actually like what Trump has to say? Is it because it's the only way to rebel? Or have young men become disposable to progressives and Democrats?
I think progressives and some folks on the far left, especially in, the liberal mainstream media, they have denigrated, emasculated, and vilified men for years. And now they're, crying in the 11th hour that they're fleeing the Democratic Party in droves. And then most young men, they want to start a family. They want to have financial security. They want to be providers. They want to go to work, get a job, right? Have the bare necessities and essentials of the American dream. And they're not seeing that from the Democrats right now whatsoever.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really tough time to be a younger guy if you believe what the left is selling you.
Totally. And then the left,
but they're still going on and on about toxic masculinity.
Right.
And then congratulating Tim Walz and Doug Emhoff for, their skim milk version of maleness.
Absolutely. I spoke about this in a video recently. Terms like toxic masculinity, mansplaining were invented on the left in the mainstream media, right? To sort of downplay men, to kind of push men to the side. And then the Democrats recently, they're shaking their heads going, why are we not reaching young men? you have no surrogates that are speaking to young men. I see they have Andy Cohen out there. Okay, don't hate Andy Cohen. He's got the Housewives. Don't think he's speaking to a lot of young men. They've got Ben Stiller. Zoolander was, 20, 25 years ago. Don't think Ben Stiller's
Yeah, I
helping
think
with
there are a
young
lot
men.
of guys your age who may not even know who
Yeah,
Ben
they don't know
Stiller
who Ben
is.
Stiller is. They've got Lizzo, Usher. I'm like, Trump, he's going on every bro guy podcast. He's,
Yes.
going on Joe Rogan today. He's doing all of these things. So he is actually speaking to that group, and he's doubling and tripling down on these low propensity male voters, maybe to make up the deficit of the women who are breaking for Kamala in some of these swing states.
Yes, but who's more agitated right now? Like, who is more likely to vote because they are either seeing what they want in a candidate or they are terrified of what they see in the other candidate, men or women?
I think women are voting for Kamala. They would vote for her even if she was a loaf of bread, because if abortion's your number one issue, you're going to go vote for Kamala Harris, right? And Kamala Harris, what I've been so disappointed in, my audience is about 80 to 90% women online. Most of the people who watch me are women, they're moms. They're really disappointed in Kamala because when she talks about women's rights, it's abortion. It begins and ends with abortion. And my thing is, the women who write me, they have economic issues, they have issues like everybody else. And was Kamala Harris protecting women when Laken Riley lost her life at the hands of an illegal migrant murder? Has she been protecting women who are on sports teams and now there are men playing in those sports teams? So it's like Kamala Harris, when she says, I'm going to protect
Jewish women from protesters on college campuses?
Absolutely, like
who
at
are not
Columbia.
able to freely associate?
Absolutely. And so Kamala Harris, her idea of protecting and uplifting women is basically abortion, and that's it. And I think a lot of women I speak to who are independents, conservatives, disaffected Democrats, they feel a little disrespected by that.
Yeah, you could push it even further back and say, what about the women or potential women who are half of the terminated pregnancies?
Well, it's interesting. It's like the number one reason, not to get too far into abortion. I'm a gay guy with no kids, so I'm not a pro on abortion. But on our campaign, we did. The day is young, right?
Yeah.
But we did do a lot of research on this for our campaign. I worked on a lot of our women's policy, our policies for mother, maternal policies, and the number one reason women have abortions is financial, right? The number one reason is I don't think I can afford to have this kid, and so for me, bolstering the economy and fostering an environment where people want to bring kids into the world is so much better.
That's what J.D. Vance said in the VP debate, and I thought it was a very smart way of framing it.
Right.
Because, we want to have a country where people want to bring children into the world and where they also feel financially secure. But, if you look at Kamala Harris's policy, she's going to take more in taxation from people, which leaves them less financially mobile.
And our government, I know you will agree with this, our government has not proven through the years that they can spend our tax dollars wisely, right?
No.
We're $35 trillion in debt, and the interest on that national debt is going to cripple my generation, Gen Alpha, whatever the next one is called.
Yeah.
So the national debt is at $35 trillion. We've spent trillions on overseas wars. We've spent trillions on random things. They don't even know where the money went. There are all these accounting errors. So taxing people to death, I don't trust Kamala and the folks in the swamp to spend that wisely.
No, especially when she's talked about shelving private health care and, Medicare for all and the Green New Deal and things that cost money, but you can't pay for that by stealing through taxation.
Don't go anywhere. More Kennedy Saves the World right after this.
There will never be enough of a tax base,
No,
which
I know.
leaves you to borrow money to cover that stuff. But then at some point, you have to start paying back those loans.
1,000%. And it's also with Kamala Harris, we need to bring more manufacturing jobs back to the United States. We just really need to build our economy better from the ground up. And does Kamala Harris seem like she has the acumen to get that done? Is she going to surround herself with great people? I don't know, because most of the people who are going to stay, it's going to be Biden's
No, she won't surround herself with great people, because if she were going to surround herself with great people,
what happened?
She would have chosen Josh Shapiro.
Right.
So it's like she's scared of being outshone by someone else in her cabinet,
100%.
which means that she will have a cabinet of very ordinary people. I still think there's a chance she could get elected. I talk to a lot of people in the building on a day-to-day basis, and they all say Trump has the momentum right now. Whether it's McDonald's, the second Butler rally,
Totally.
going on those podcasts, sitting for long-form interviews, having press conferences. He's given himself the momentum. And do you think he's a different enough candidate now than he was in 2020?
Donald Trump, not known for humility. He would be the first to say that. He joked about that the other night at the Al Smith dinner. He doesn't have any self-deprecating jokes. But one thing he has shown humility in recently is he spoke about how in his first term, he was new to D.C. He didn't know a lot of people. He won the election, and he had a couple months to staff the government with thousands of people, right? And some of the bureaucrats and people who made their way into Trump's circle in the first term, they screwed him over. They didn't have the country's best interest at heart. And Donald Trump has said on podcasts and shows recently, now I know who the good folks are. I'm going to surround myself with these people. Now I have a better idea of what to do and how we can execute. And so I think that's why you mentioned a lot of these young men, they're looking at Donald Trump as a change agent and Kamala Harris as a continuation of the same old folks in the same old swamp.
Yes. I think the assassination attempt also humbled him. And
we don't know, though.
I mean, just hearing his speech at the RNC, it was too long.
It was a little long, But no, I definitely do think he's been humbled a little bit, and he seems to have more faith. He brings up faith more in his speeches, so it'll be interesting to see. But the Republican Party seems like the big tent party to me this election cycle. The Democrats, even online, and someone who lives on social media, it's very much you're either at the cool kids table in the Democratic Party or you're out. If you disagree with one thing, you better get out. And Trump's like, oh, we got Tulsi, we got RFK, we've got these folks, we've got Elon Musk, who's been,
You've
probably
got all
a liberal
these people
his whole
who
life.
are really attractive to libertarians,
Right, absolutely.
in their own right, maybe in their own lanes,
100%.
And I don't know if libertarians are ever going to find a candidate that they love completely.
100%.
But what happened to the Libertarian Party? Because, as long as I can remember, it's like, this is our year. This is what we've been waiting for.
Totally.
Everyone hates Republicans and Democrats. And it's like, this really would have been the year.
It's funny. I love Angela McArdle, who's, the head of the Libertarians and runs everything. And anytime I meet
her out.
Yeah, but anytime I meet her, she's fun. She has good ways to brand and market the Libertarian Party and raise the profile. I feel she does.
Yeah.
Like with the Libertarian...
She hasn't, certainly not this election cycle.
You don't think so? I feel like with the convention...
I know so.
With the convention having Trump and Kennedy speak, I thought was a good small step forward, saying, look, we have to raise the profile of the party, but the candidate is a disaster, right? You'd be able to speak to that way better than I would. The candidate's
I
not
like
doing
Chase,
anything.
but I don't know if Chase likes Chase.
Okay. So I don't know what's going to happen with the Libertarian Party. I feel much more libertarian than I do sometimes connected to both of the main big parties, Republican or Democrat. I also think in the next 10 or 20 years, maybe we'll see even a stronger independent third party like we have in almost every developed country in the West.
They say that every time, but the way everything is set up, they only want each other. It's a very sick love addiction cycle between Republicans and Democrats.
I do feel like, though, on our campaign, the Kennedy campaign, we put a few cracks in the ceiling of what, an independent candidate could look like. In the 21st century, Ross Perot was great in 1992. He had a ton of money, and after that, they changed a lot of the rules and regulations to,
that was a
push
century
out.
ago.
Right, and so, but I do think, and I hope, we see some independent candidates,
I do too. That's all I've ever wanted.
Right.
I want a proliferation of voices on stage because at some point, one of those voices is going to represent what I believe in, which is freedom.
Totally.
Well, cheers to you, Link.
Cheers.
I love checking in with you.
Thank you. A very serious conversation for happy hour.
Hey! Do you have any bets on how the election's going to go?
Oh, no, I'm not taking bets. I'm just glad we're having happy hour, which is also how Kamala prepares for every interview.
Every interview except the debate. The debate was the only time we've seen her sober.
Sober. Anytime I see Kamala give an interview, I'm like, is this sponsored by Tito's or Xanax? What's happening? I can't tell.
Sometimes both.
Or both.
It's really exciting.
People at home don't follow the
Who
advice.
do you think's going to win?
Ooh, I'm done making predictions. At this point, people turn out. I will say we all have one vote. That's the most equalizing thing in this country. Unless you're a Democrat, maybe you got some dead folks voting. I'm kidding. But no, we all have one vote. So everybody turn out and vote. Don't cry over spilled milk on November 6th if you stayed home.
Yeah.
And I think Trump is working as hard as he can. Kamala, she took a day off, but she is out there working. So who the hell knows how it's going to shake out?
All right.
Who
Link,
knows?
beautifully said.
Thank you.
Here's Link Lauren. This is Happy Hour. This is Kennedy Saves the World. I'm Kennedy.
Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.
Oh, go ahead and leave me a review while you're there. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You've been listening to Kennedy Saves the World on the Fox News Podcast Network.